This video looks at challenges facing the Caribbean region. You might notice a fight theme throughout, and that's just because I want to emphasize that a challenge is a situation or an issue that is working against the development of the region. So as Caribbean countries, we in a sense have to fight to overcome them to see to our region's development. Now, when you think about the Caribbean, you might be inclined to think about our great beaches, the warm tropical sun, maybe our rich natural resources like fertile soil, for example, or even our dynamic human resource. But the fact of the matter is, as a region, we do face some challenges. Here are 5 main categories of challenges that we essentially have to go to war against in the Caribbean region if we want to achieve regional development. Economic limitations, capital and resource availability, use of technology, the geography of the region, and labor force issues. You can break down each of those 5 categories into smaller issues, as you see here in the tables that I have on the screen. So when you look at the geography of the region, you could look more specifically at our vulnerability to natural disasters. When you consider labor force issues, you could look at the fact that there's a shortage of skilled workers, or you could look at levels of unemployment and underemployment, and so on. For the purpose of keeping this video as short as possible, I'm only going to cover 1 or 2 of the smaller issues under each of these general areas. I put them in these groups so that hopefully you might be able to remember a wider scope of issues more easily. So instead of having to think about 12 or 13 in particular, you only have to think about 5 general groups, and you can decide which ones under each broad category you'd like to remember. The first group of challenges that we'll be looking at are those that relate to capital and resource availability. The first thing under capital and resource availability we'll see is that Caribbean countries generally have small sizes, which lead to them having small national markets. Most Caribbean countries are categorized by the United Nations as small island developing states, or you would hear SIDS. Here's a screenshot from one of the websites managed by the UN. This section looks at the list of SIDS, and as you can see, there are 16 Caribbean countries that are classified as SIDS. See if you can find your country on the list. For some more detailed information, St. Lucia has an area of about 238.2 square miles, and Trinidad, yes, Trinidad and Tobago is classified as a SID, has an area of 1,981 square miles. If you think that Trinidad should not be a SID in the UN, then let us compare its area to that of France and the United States of America. Yes, Trinidad is a SID. How does the size of the country affect the capital and resource availability? If you think about it logically, the size of the land would give a general indication of how many people the land can sustainably support. A smaller piece of land would not be able to sustainably support as large of a population as a larger piece of land. This limits the population sizes of Caribbean countries. And by extension, it limits the amount of local demand that can be generated. Because we have smaller populations, there are fewer people around to spend money on the goods and services produced by local businesses. This also prevents businesses from achieving economies of scale in many instances. For those of you who do business, you should already know this, but for those who don't, here's a quick summary of what economies of scale are. This diagram, this graph, shows the long-run average cost curve. So this is the black line. That line shows how average cost changes in the long run. Caribbean countries typically produce goods, let's say, at a quantity Q1. That's the amount. When you bring Q1 up to the curve, the price of the goods is at P1. If you were to increase the quantity of production from Q1 to Q2, then the price of the good would decrease to P2. However, Caribbean countries typically don't have enough people to produce goods at quantity Q2. So those businesses don't get to enjoy the lower price at P2. Instead, we're stuck at Q1 and the higher price of P1. This prevents businesses from achieving the lowest possible cost of production and making maximum profits on their products. So that is a downside to having a small population. The second factor we look at under capital and resource availability is those differences in resource distribution. Some countries have natural resources that can be exploited very profitably. Resources like oil, natural gas, petroleum, gold, bauxite. Think about Ghana and Trinidad and Tobago. These countries tend to have more robust economies because their raw materials are of high value. On the other end, those countries without these types of resources are likely to have higher import bills, especially if they are importing energy. You don't have it, so you have to buy it, and it's a necessity. Think of it as them having an empty fridge at home. When you have no food in the fridge, you buy takeout. If you live a life where all you eat is takeout, you are much more likely to be a higher spender than someone who prepares their meals at home.